11th of October 2023. Welcome all staff members here today, and Councillor Paniora online, and we've got apologies from Mike Howard and Gordon Lambeth. So our first item today is financial contributions policy. I welcome Sue Davidson to present this, please.
Just through the chair, I'm going to give you a quick intro first, if that's okay. Just before we start, we wanted to remind you of the market events for the community. The council stands at each of these markets where they're going to talk about what council does, and there's an opportunity to discuss LTP things, and councillors have received the invitations to those. They are on the 28th of October at Mangawhai Tavern Market, and the 4th of November at the Dargaville Community Market at the Community Centre and the Maungataroto Night Market. And the comms team want to thank those who have already RSVP'd to those. You're encouraged to join in. Just to give you a quick update of where you're up to, we're still working on the financials and activities. That's all right now, but you won't have to for finance. Financials and activities, so we're just working through those still. And today we have Sue's team returning with financial policies, and the first activity returns with the budgets attached. Today is also an introduction to using a prioritisation process, because what the community and you want to achieve is likely to exceed the funds available. Prioritisation is a critical tool in the long-term plan process, but we'll touch on this later. First, we'll just zip over to Sue's team.
Thank you for that, Tracy. Look, just on that note about the LTP chances to meet with your community, I encourage you all to take part in those where you can. The last round we did, I actually found really enjoyable. It was good to meet people in the community I had met before and have robust discussions. Yeah, if you can, please attend. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, Council. So this is the financial contributions policy, which is another one of the policies that we review every 3 years. So there's not many changes to the actual policy itself. It's just about getting, because of the fact it's about getting the financial contributions revenue in, and you get that by allocated a certain amount per lot. It's according to the value of that lot, and spending it in the various areas of development. So it's only a very small policy. The roading is very specific, and it's gathered from certain roads and pulled off for development of those roads in the future. But you can see, if you go to the financial contributions reserves itself, we've gone down in detail, and obviously if there's, this will be of interest to you, the money that we had at the beginning of the year, and try and move that somewhere down here. The money we had at the beginning of the year, 11.5 million. We got in 2.9 million this year, of which 10%, as per the policy, has gone to district reserves, and the rest falls in where it was gathered. And then you can see that there were certain capital projects that we had that were allocated to be funded by financial reserves. And so the money's come out. The biggest one obviously was the purchase of the sports ground in Moore Street. And then there's also detectable grants awarded. There was 147 of those. And we also gave a grant to the Mangawhai skate park. So the balance at the end is 5.6 million. And primarily still in Mangawhai, which is showing healthy, but it won't be so healthy once we finish the shared path. And in Dargaville, there's not much coming in there. Well, there hasn't been development. There will be, though, with all these plan changes coming. So that's what happened this year. Then
So sorry, can I ask a question, please?
Yes, you can.
Thank you, Sue. Just this financial contribution reserve, just for the knowledge of these members, how you're building it up? So it's sitting at 11 million or something, opening balance and 5 million. Is it like something you draw on when you have no other money or what?
No, so it specifically relates to a resource consent.
Yeah.
And we require everyone who does a subdivision to pay us a certain amount of money as a contribution to the growth in that specific area. So it's paid on top of development contributions you pay for sewer and water. Financial contributions are for really parks, access to reserves, walkways, that sort of thing. So it's specifically, there's 4 areas and there's a specific policy that we have in council.
Yeah, sorry, so my question is obviously related to, at what point, like to draw money for purchase from this financial, to be in LTP or it can be drawn anytime?
Sometimes it could be drawn at any time, like the purchase of the sports ground. We had money there and it wasn't part of our LTP, but we did do a mini consultation because it didn't affect people's back pockets, but it did affect this reserve. And so that was done ad hoc, but normally you would do it with the long-term plan or every annual plan. We identify the projects and put them in there.
Vincent?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Perhaps it would help, it might have been a bit deceiving with the word reserve taken the wrong way. Like it's not financial reserves held against a rainy day, but we've had a few rainy days, or for the acquisition or upgrading of reserve land, or, for public reserves. Okay.
Thank you, councillor Williams.
Thank you. So we've got this policy here today that we're looking at. Will there be the development contributions coming to council to look at that per area and what's charged as a review, or?
Yes, that will be coming. I've only just got all the capital projects in and it depends on some of the discussion that's happening. So I can't put more in until you actually come to a decision. So, and come to give me some guidance. So yes, it will be, but it probably won't be for 1 to 2 months.
Okay.
Because it relies on new development. So this one here, so looking ahead, we've started with the opening balance, obviously, put in conservative amount, 1.8 million that we think will come through. And there were some other adjustments that we'd missed last year, so we're putting them in this year. And then obviously some more capital expenditure is planned. And then you've got the forecast balance at the end of this year. So you can see there, Mangawhai, given if it keeps at that level, will be down. Hiawatha fairly depleted as well because of the capital projects. But people will see that because the capital projects have been repairing and Dargaville more in debt. Yeah, and Mangataroja with a bit of funding there that could be used, but yeah.
Councillor Larson, followed by councillor Aaron Wilson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I just think that there might be a need for a little bit of disambiguation here because in fact we are using the word reserves in both senses. It is a financial reserve, but one of the financial contributions that we're collecting is called reserve contributions to be used for the upgrading of physical parks, so known as reserves. So it's both of those things. I think we also need to disambiguate what a financial contribution is and what a development contribution is, because a financial contribution is levied under the Resource Management Act and a development contribution is levied under the Local Government Act. And so I guess my question here, Sue, is you're accounting here for what appears to be just financial contributions collected for reserves, as in reserve contributions. There must be still some funds coming in from when council was levying financial contributions for roading as well. Where is that accounted for?
That's accounted for in this whole.
Just there?
So there hasn't been any spending, but we're in the process of because you've got to remember this is, some of these accounts I've got new accountants we're looking at where they could be used in the future and trying to, and then we'll approach roading to see what roads you've got as priority roads, can we put it out? And this is where the money from Black Swamp, where because of the fact we took contributions, financial contributions from a couple of subdivisions on Black Swamp Road, we're able to contribute to where Tara Iti is actually spending the money there as well. So we've been using some of that funds.
Okay, thank you. And so, just to come back to Councillor Williams' question about development contributions, is that next month or?
No, I'm not sure. It's when I get a better idea of the projects, because there's no point bringing development contributions. I can bring you what's happened to last year, but I can't tell you what's happening to going forward.
Okay, just if you don't mind, Your Worship, I just wouldn't mind asking a question about that, because we have obviously now moved to a regime where we've got development contributions being collected for roading, whereas previously financial contributions were used. When do those development contributions get collected for roading, and what's the mechanism by which that occurs? Like when a resource consent is granted under the Resource Management Act, how does that link to the collection of the development contributions?
So the development contributions, along with financial contributions, are normally a condition of consent. They're not paid until the very last, they'll be the last condition, because you don't want to give away your money up front to the council. You'll basically put in the infrastructure that you need on your subdivision before you pay that. So it could be a number of years further ahead than when the consent is granted.
I've read quite a number of recently issued consents, and I haven't been able to find any reference to the roading development contribution, which I think is about $3,500 per lot.
It is being collected, because when you see the development contributions, you'll see that that's been increasing.
Okay, well, thank you.
Sorry.
Councillor, now hang on, I've got a order speaking. Councillor Erin Wilson-Collins, and followed by Councillor Vincent, followed by Rajna.
Thank you. Hi, Sue. I just want to query the minus figure for the Dargle area. And we talked about the upcoming plan changes. So are we expecting that will balance itself out at some stage? Because I'm just mindful that we're obviously spending money in the Dargle area where we're not raising financial contributions, which is great in a way, because they obviously don't have a lot of money coming in. We're expecting those plan changes. What's the forward projection? Should we be concerned? Do we need to worry about what we're spending in the area? Do we need to?
I think what we have to do is, when we come to the long-term plan, if there's any more projects like that would qualify for financial contributions, they probably shouldn't come out of this account. We just leave it, and we start to look at, do we incur debt as a council as a result of those projects? But we've been really fortunate that we have in other areas got lots of funds coming in to fund some of the infrastructure that we've been putting up, toilets, car parks, the shared path.
It's a complete opposite story to what the public think is happening. So it's very good to see this. Thank you for sharing.
And to understand that, yeah. And obviously in the team here, this is coming down, and we've provided $250,000 each year in grants, and some of the car parking for all of the district comes out of here. Like I think there's a Poto Wharf project planned, and that'll come out of this district. The car park there.
Nice. Thank you for that.
Councillor Vincent.
Oh, thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for your indulgence, since I've already asked a question. But two things on the development contribution story. I think the answer might be that it's the granting of the resource consent under the RMA that triggers the issuing of a notice under the Local Government Act relating to development contributions. So your liability is this much, and until that's paid, they won't get their condition certificate at the end of the resource consent process. I think it runs in parallel. I can't see how you could have a condition of a consent issued under the Resource Management Act being compliance with another act.
Well, that's what I thought as well, which is why I thought it wasn't showing up in the decisions.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't because it's not under the RMA.
So through the chair, all I know is Dina doesn't give anyone title till they pay the DCs and the financial contributions. And she's the wall between.
Okay, one more.
I did have another question because I'm intrigued by this. It only just occurred to me. I could have asked before the meeting. Expected deposits for Mangataroto include $160,000. And there's a proposal which has been mooted a number of occasions, and I'll keep coming back to it, is the footpath between Woodland Road and I guess the primary school. There's already a footpath part of the way up Gorge Road. I'm wondering if something like that would attract subsidy from NZTA.
So those are questions to ask the roading department. When you have got things like shared path, it could be that our part of it comes out of the financial contributions. And for Mangataroto, there's quite substantial balances that we're anticipating. So, the council share could come out of that, which is good to think when you start looking at what the roading department will be presenting to you later this afternoon with some nice to haves. And, perhaps those don't come out of our roading budget, but they come out of, if they can be more of a shared path and comply with the.
Yeah, councillor No.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, being in the finance field, if you look at the whole graph, the one striking thing you see is Dargaville and surround is in negative zone of minus 288. And again, you are having a planned capex of 325. I don't know what is about that. And how can you carry on having a projection of something you don't have the money to carry on? So is it possible? My suggestion is, and if others agree, there is a lot of money sitting in the district wide. Just for the sake of picturization, you should transfer some money into that field as well. So you can actually do something for Dargaville. Because being a financial projection, I don't understand how can you spend.
So through the chair, that's what I just explained to councillor Wilson Collins, is that we probably wouldn't put any more projects in after this $500,000. But council can decide whether, and I think it's Bailey's beach toilets. That's what we're talking about there. They've been key. They're on the plan, but they're costing a lot more. It was to be funded from, and that's only the bit to be funded from financial reserves. The other bit is about another 300,000 that we've got from the tourist infrastructure funding. So yes, if council wants that to be funded through debt or through the district reserves, you can make that decision, but I haven't had that instruction. And at the moment, I do it for.
Yeah, so that's my suggestion, to be put on the table or whatever later on. To be considered that it can be funded from the district wide. It doesn't make sense to have negative figures in projections and doing things on those when you don't have the money. And you are proposing debt for everything, even toilets. Doesn't make sense to me when we're talking millions of dollars.
There's a credit balance at the end.
Yeah, in the end, I'm treating it as one jam jar.
Yeah.
And, but this is how it falls. So when Dargaville does get some money in there, then it'll repay that part. We won't go any higher than that. And we'll bring it to your attention because I don't know what's in the long-term plan yet. I haven't seen what people are proposing for the Dargaville area, for that financial contribution area.
Thank you.
Can I just sleep in there, Mr. Mayor? And so this is about the policy itself, and there's a policy, the policy dictates a little bit how the splits occur.
So there's two policies. This is one is the financial policy, the financial contributions policy. But in addition to that, the council devised and aligning it with the district plan as to how the reserves contributions should be spent and what districts we have. And there's four districts, Dargaville and surrounds, Mangataroto and surrounds, Kaiwaka, Mangawhai, and then they created a district-wide account and they give out community grants. This is different to any other council that I've seen. You don't normally have a district-wide account. Normally 100% would go to the area that is generating the growth.
Yeah.
But this council decided it didn't want that. It wanted to be generous, give the community a chance to actually fund some of their own projects.
Okay, let's move on. Thank you.
There's no questions? That's
So we move on to the revenue and finance policy forestry targeted. So we've got Kurt Martin and Andy Brown from NTA, Christine Toms and Sue Davidson. Welcome up.
me. So council requested an independent review of the roading forestry targeted rate. And to that end, Kurt's been requested to do that for us. So I'm here to just present that and, well, Kurt will walk you through it. And I'm here to help answer any rating type questions that might come. So over to you, Kurt.
Oh, morning, everybody. I've just prepared a PowerPoint presentation here, which hopefully summarises the key issues in the report that I did, which I assume everybody's got a copy of. So firstly, just a reminder how the majority of council's roading program is funded. Most of it is subsidised through the Land Transport Fund. Council's subsidy rate is 62%. So most of its roading program, every dollar we spend, council has to fund 38 cents of that, and 62% of that is subsidised by the central government through our fuel taxes, etc. So that's the bulk of council's program, not all of it, but for the maintenance and upgrade of the roading network used by the forestry, that applies. Quick history, the forestry roading targeted rate was introduced back in 2015. I think commissioners were running council back in those days. And it was recognised then that the impact of the forestry traffic on the network was resulting in increased maintenance and expenditure by council. So they looked to introduce a targeted rate, which they did. And that's been carried through to the current LTP. So since then, the original intention was that it was expected to only be for a 6-year period, based on the initial assessment of the impact and the required expenditure. But subsequent reviews of that have identified that, you know, that level of additional expenditure is required nonetheless. And council's not alone in this. There are a number of councils across New Zealand who charge whether it's a rating differential or targeted rate, they charge the forestry sector additional for similar reasons. And some of them will supply other sectors. They charge targeted rates for them, for example, on quarries, etc. So, looking back, the NTA commissioned WSP consultants back in 2019, 2020 to do a much more comprehensive review on the impacts of forestry traffic on its network and what the resulting expenditure would be. As part of that, they engaged Form Consulting, who are nationally recognised industry experts in the logging area. They undertook a review of the forestry industry, and based on that and the expected harvesting cycles, they made a prediction on the amount of logging traffic on council's network, on the unsealed network. It was a snapshot in time. It's based on predicted harvesting cycles, and they will vary, just as any other business will, dependent on log prices, etc. So this is a summary of there. So what this graph is showing is the red is what the predicted over a 20-year period, what council would need to spend on its network without forestry traffic on it. and the grey is expended, expected expenditure, including the forestry. So you can see the right-hand column is the total over 20 years, and you can see that the forecast goes from 74 million to 122 million. So that's an indication of the additional cost that council would need to incur as a result of the forestry traffic. And just a reminder again, that's the total cost, so council would have to fund 38% of that. Based on, on that modelling and that, it's clearly evident that the forestry traffic is having an impact on council's unsealed network and resulting in fact accelerated wear and tear, which means council has to rehabilitate those roads sooner than if the traffic wasn't there. I already just said there it's gone from 74 million to 122 million, which increases the annual cost of average from 2.4 to 3.7 million. So,
Councillor Vincent?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So this is the first question we have to answer, isn't it? Do we have a targeted forestry rate or not? And what you've done is provided the documented evidence that there is a strong basis for us to impose such a rate, what it might take. But that's the first step, isn't it?
yeah, well, so what I've demonstrated is that, based on all the evidence there, that the forestry traffic is resulting in additional wear and tear on council's network, which is resulting in additional cost, right?
Yep.
So,
because I'm thinking ahead to circulation of our draft long-term plan and challenges from the forestry industry, we have a basis to justify imposition of a targeted rate.
correct. Well, it's one of the reasons that you can put on the table. I think, and I'll cover it a bit later, and I'll just speak to it now. Rates are a tax. There's very little equity in that.
Mhm.
It's very broad brushed. There is no requirement to demonstrate a cost benefit. In this case, you could say, well, they cost an extra 2.5 million a year. We're going to recover. We only need to recover an additional 2.5 million a year from the forestry sector if you elect to. You can recover within reason whatever you want from any sector in there. How you fund that is clear. It's council decision. There's no right or wrong. There has to be some degree of rationale, but you don't have to demonstrate a cost benefit. That's quite clear. That's been through the courts a number of times. And that was very recently tested this year. The Court of Appeal, New Zealand Forestry Association, took Wairoa District Council, and that was one of the arguments they put on the table, and the judges threw it out and said it's a tax, go away. As long as council follows its prescribed processes and has some degree of rationale and determine who it wants to charge, it can pretty much do whatever it likes.
Councillor Manderson?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you, may I ask that the economic outlook for the use of logs by China for forestry is very clouded. I understand they have vacant buildings for over 65 million people, and they face serious economic decline. Should we not therefore be taxing growers of logs on the basis of consumption rather than an alternative on the basis of area or some other esoteric assumption?
So through the chair, in terms of rating and setting rates, the Local Government Rating Act prescribes how, the methodology that councils can set those rates. And they are quite prescriptive in there, and that's effectively, it's based on land value or capital value. There's an annual value, which is quite a complicated process.
Or hectares.
Sorry?
Or hectares.
Yeah, but it's based on the value in terms of changing it. But to go there but you have to, when council elects how it's going to charge a general rate, it can't say I'm going to charge that sector, for example, based on land value and those guys on capital value. It's either all land value or all capital value or whatever. You've got to be consistent in that regard. You've also got to consider the practicalities of administering Some forestry owners will say, well, I only harvest every 25 or 30 years. Why don't you rate me when I harvest? Well, how does council keep tabs on who's harvesting and when? You know, it's almost impossible to do that. So I think you have to be practical in how you set that rate to allow council to administer it. Yeah, and yes, I understand logging prices are down, China's demand is down they go through cycles like everyone else, but so does every other business, and we all have ups and downs in businesses, and that's just the way the world goes, I guess.
Councillor Nair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just have, always curious with these options, impact and issue. So when you say issue, you obviously mean after we take the decision. So it's 1 to 7 options, whatever it is. So the issue will arise after we take it, or is the issue before you take the option? So you're telling us, number one, status quo, and we don't have a forest target rate, right? You mentioned?
We do.
No, we do.
Okay, so then we also have not all forestry property identified. It's an ongoing complaint from forestry owners. So this is the current issue?
Correct.
Right. So I guess all those issues on the right are the issues. If I look at all the options, all options have issues.
Correct.
None of the option is worthwhile. We are just wasting our time. So can you just tell us, how does it work in other concepts? Because that's always, I mean, we have 70s of them.
Can I interfere? I think Kurt's got some good descriptions about how other councils work. It's in here.
No, I'm asking about other concepts. Is there any?
No, I'm saying you've got comparisons in your report.
Yes,
But
Get it in your report, Ash.
page,
Sure you read it in your report.
I read the report, yeah.
yeah, so look, I think what we'll do is the report, Kurt's presentation is not long. I think we should go right through it, so you get a lot of these answers in the report that he's presenting, and then we have questions and answers. I think they'll make the day run a lot easier.
Okay.
Thank you. Just
Thank you.
note down the questions you're going to have, and we'll get to the end of the presentation. Thank you.
All right, so a common comparison from the forestry industry is that while the dairy, you know, with all their milk tankers going up and down, cause, you know, just as much damage to the road based on this thing there. So based on literature available, I did a review of that, and for a similar area, in this case 1,000 hectares, the over the logging cycle, forestry has a slightly greater traffic loading on the network per hectare, per 1,000 hectares, 13%. Take a margin of error, you could argue that they're very similar. So yes, that's quite correct. For similar land area, dairy and forestry are very similar in terms of their traffic impact on there. However, most of the rating rates, if you put the targeted rate aside, is collected via the general rate, which is currently based on land value, and on average, dairy farms, you know, per hectare are nearly 7 times more valuable than forestry land, and therefore they will pay nearly 7 times the general rate per equivalent area of land. So the traffic loading is the same per 1 hectare, 10 hectares, 100 hectares, whatever you're comparing, but the dairy will currently pay nearly 7 times the rate. So currently the annual rating targeted rate revenue is approximately $500,000. So that's the quantum that council is currently collecting. If you add the 62% subsidy, that effectively gives council an additional budget of a budget of $1.3 million that we could that we could target towards the unsealed network. As I just said, the Local Government Rating Act sets out how council may, the rules and regulations for setting rates and how they can determine which properties pay how much rates. You know, as a targeted rate, there are a number of criteria in there that water supply is always, potable water is a good example. It's a targeted rate, but only those who have a council water connection pay their targeted rate based on the volume metric. Same as wastewater, if you've got a sewer connection, you pay, so only those who have the council sewer connection pay. So it's targeted to those. A targeted rate can be set across the entire district if you like. Whangarei East district council used to have a targeted rate for solid waste management that everybody across but there's rules and regulations about how you can slice and dice that. And in this instance, the targeted rate for the forestry rating one is targeted to properties in the district that are categorised forestry exotic. And that just means they're pretty much commercial forests in there. There are some forestry that are natural, etc., that aren't charged that rate. The principle, I guess, that they're not harvested per se. I mean, as I said, you need to remember that a rate is a tax. And as long as council follows the process, it can determine who pays what within the district. And as long as this documentation is clear and the process is clear and it's gone through that consultative process, it's a tax and it's not fair. Even on anything, there's a range of that and some benefit more and some benefit less. It's to use equity or fairness and tax in the same sentence is an oxymoron. It just doesn't apply. I talked about the land value of the dairy versus forestry. As I say, it's roughly 7 times more, but if you also want to consider an ability to pay, affordability, I had a look at, on average, how much the dairy farm would earn over 60 years, two forestry cycles versus how much the forestry would make over the same period. When you consider that forestry has a reasonable amount of upfront expenditure and only recovers that every 30 years on average when it harvests. So using the net present value and all that's really doing is it's taken into account that the fact that money devalues over time. If you spend $100 today and you've got to wait 30 years to recoup some revenue from that in 30 years time, that $100 is, if you put it in the bank, would be worth a lot more. Under your mattress will be worth a lot less. So it's all the net present value I think tries to take into consideration. We're just converting all that future expenses and revenue back to current day values to make a comparison. And looking at that, you can see, a forestry block might make $5,000 per hectare over 60 years and as an annual average, and whereas dairy earns a lot more. I don't think that's a real surprise. And that's generally a reflection of why dairy land is worth a lot more than forestry land, because it's a business decision. You can make a lot more money out of it. So that just, I think, corroborates that. So, yep, they pay more rates, general rate per hectare, but you've got to argue they can afford to pay a lot more because they earn a lot more. Just some basic stats, as I said, 6.87 times the average land value per hectare. Dairy is greater than forestry. But when you take the forestry targeted rate into account, on average, they will pay 2.4 times the rate, the general rate that forestry does. So that closes that gap from 7 times to 2.5 times by imposing a targeted rate on them. Options. So look, there are numerous options and there are a whole lot of permutations, and it's almost impossible to list them all. There'd be pages and pages of there. So I have listed some options there, and just for consideration, you can look at each one of those individually, or you can take a combination of them or vary them. It's up to you as a council, guidance to staff on that, so they can go and do some more detailed analysis on a number of options to inform your decision when you come to decide whether you want to carry on with this target rate, and if you do, how you like to apply. So just, status quo. So that's the current targeted rate. It's based on land value. The forestry land, like everywhere else, has a range. Average per hectare. So if you had a 100 hectare forestry block in one part of the district and 100 hectares somewhere else, if they've got different land values, they will pay a different rate based on land value. So whether, we've had some complaints that that's not as equitable. The other options there, you can rate based on land area rather than land value. You can set the targeted rate on the premise that assuming that each hectare produces the same amount of logs and therefore has the same traffic impact, that's probably closer to the user pays end of the spectrum. And I'll show you later on, if you're looking to go that, what the impacts would be. You can just continue it and just say, we're not going to have a targeted rate. That would currently equate to an approximately 1.5% increase in the general rates. If effectively you're redistributing that $500,000 per year over what your general rate payers. Third option I talk about is land area, and there's a graph from there, the impacts on that. Option 4 is you can include dairy categorised properties in their targeted rate. You know, they do add extra loading on there, whilst their land value is dearer and they pay more rates, they can afford to pay more. So you want to spread that burden. It's just an option. Option 5 is include mining quarries effectively. You know, quarries they also have their traffic from there have a significant impact on council's roading network in general. Other councils also have a targeted rate applied to them, so that's an option. You can either just include them in there and spread that burden over there, which means the targeted rate itself will go down slightly because it's spread over a larger number of properties, or you can keep no rate and effectively that rate revenue would increase. Option 6 is Wairoa District Council. They apply the forestry targeted rate only to properties greater than 100 hectares. I understand that's on the principle that generally those smaller forestry blocks are your small time or smaller times investments and not the larger corporates. The larger corporates forestry corporates who have much larger land holdings, they generally have a constant source of revenue because they are harvesting those blocks, you know, in cycles over time. So they generally, whilst it goes up and down with their harvesting cycles, they generally do have an income each year, therefore making, paying their ongoing annual costs probably a bit more affordable, whereas your small time block owners don't have that luxury. You know, they will wait 25, 30 years and harvest it then, and in the meantime, they've got to keep on paying their annual rates. It's looking on there, it's again further on, I just have a slide that just shows what percentage of properties would be affected if you went by that option. Option 7 is, there are a number of forestry blocks, I don't know how many, looking at the aerials, particularly at State Highway 12, that don't use council's network. They access straight onto the State Highway network, which council doesn't maintain. They are currently charged the forestry targeted rate. Again, it's not wrong for council to do that. It's just a question of equity and how you balance that. You can elect to exclude them from the targeted rate, but if you want to maintain that $500,000 plus additional income from that, it would mean that the other remaining forestry properties rates would have to increase to cover that cost. Or you could add other ones like mining or quarries. So this option 3, this is moving from land value to land area. Effectively, of the current 96 odd properties, about 70 properties rates would decrease and 26 of them would increase. The graph there shows the quantum of, in brackets, of increases and decreases. The biggest decrease would be one property will have a decrease between $10,000 and $20,000. Conversely, the 2 properties right in the bottom of that graph, we would have rates increase of more than $20,000 a year. It's generally just reflecting those properties with land values that are below the average and above the average. Simple as that. That's the impact. Again, not wrong to do that. It's just a different way of leaving that rate. And all those whose rates go down will probably be great, and all those rates who would increase will probably jump up and down more and come and complain to council. Yes, as I spoke about the 100 hectare threshold, there is at least one other council that I know of that does that. It's just an option. So effectively, if you excluded the properties less than 100 hectares, they it's about 9.8% by land value, 10%. It's not a huge amount of properties. But you'd have to increase the rate by about 11% on the remaining properties to maintain that. So as I say, there's no right and wrong, as long as you follow the process. I know it's not easy, but it's a decision council has to make as along with the rest of its rates. All right. Good question.
Great question, councillor Nair first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, no, thank you for the presentation. It's very detailed, and obviously, I don't know why you picked to compare with other industries like dairy, which is totally out of this world as compared to forestry. In scheme of things, dairy happens on a daily basis. That happens on God knows, as Councillor Madison pointed out, it may be the fag end of forestry, right? And also in terms of other councils, what I hear is all of them are choosing first the use it is put to. So obviously, and the clarification I'd like to know from you is FE is forestry exotic or something. So it doesn't include pine trees?
That essentially is pine trees. The forestry exotic is essentially those forestries that are commercial forests that are, grown for either for the timber or for carbon, as opposed to native forest.
Okay, so don't you recommend one option? The option one you said is to increase the spectrum of properties which we have not identified. Yeah, I think it's an ongoing exercise. And do you have any idea about percentage? Is it 50%, 20%, which is not identified?
Through the chair, look, I've got no idea. Council, that's done by council's service providers who do the valuation, QV. I think it's every 3 years you do a revaluation.
Yes, maybe I could understand, yes.
So because that will increase the uptake we can take from those properties. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, look, sorry,
Yeah, I don't think we've answered it properly.
Mind answering just to answer that question?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. So, as Kurt said, QV determine the highest and best use for a property. So there are a number of properties that might have forestry on it, but the highest and best use for that property might be dairy or some other sort of pastoral usage. So the highest and best use is legally what they have to categorise the land as. So we will always find, if we continue to rate on the category, that there will be properties that have got a part of forestry on it, potentially, and we won't be rating that because it won't have the category of FE because it's got other usage on it. Does that answer the question?
So it's not the actual use of the property, it is what can it be used for, is it?
That's what the valuation provider gives us, yeah. What it's used for can also lead to their determination of the category. So there might be, for example, I'm not a valuer, but there might be some land that is probably the highest and best use for it could be pastoral, but someone's gone and planted forestry on it. So they would change the category in that situation and say, well, it's actually used for forestry. So therefore it's predominantly used for that. So that's what they'll change it to. But the valuers make those decisions, not us.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Vincent.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to back up a bit, in comparing the impact of forestry against dairying, can we just take through, you're an engineer, aren't you?
Yep.
So take a kilometre of unsealed road and consider 20 heavy truck movements in one day, so forestry harvesting operation, against 20 truck operations over 10 days, which is an in and out with a dairy tanker. So would there be any difference in the state of the road? in those two scenarios?
Well, through the chair, in terms of the life of a pavement, the answer is no. When they design pavements, I think in the report, I converted truck movements, or we call equivalent standard axle, because not all trucks are equal, right? You've got big trucks and small trucks. And just for the record, a standard 40-ton logging truck and a fully loaded truck and trailer dairy truck are very similar in terms of ESAs. So they design the pavement on the number, they'll say that road based on the ground conditions and that amount of pavement can take this amount of equivalent standard axles over it's a 20-year period or 25-year design. It'll be 1 million, 10 million, whatever, right? So if they occur over a shorter period, well, then that pavement will expire over a shorter period. So to answer your question, no, not really. I mean, there are other mitigating circumstances. For example, if it's bucketing down with rain over that period where the logging trucks are using it intensively and the pavement is saturated, it may well deteriorate quicker than the area over 10 days or whatever.
Because why I asked my question, because my understanding was, and I'm not the engineer in the discussion, is that there are air pores in the road structure which get squeezed out with a truck going over it. And if another truck comes over top before that's recovered back to its previous condition, will have more of an impact than, so that if you've got a tanker going over, okay, faster than half an hour, say, in and out, but then it's got the rest of the day to rest and recover its previous condition, as opposed to getting hammered down once, hammered down again, because of the rapid succession of movements would have a much greater impact. Now, you're saying that that's not the case.
Look, I say, in my experience, no, that's negligible.
Okay.
You know, these logging trucks aren't sort of coming, one after another in terms of long trains and that, there might be half an hour, whatever, in between them. And that elasticity of the pavement, the stress and the strain is instantaneous. The 8-ton axle load pushes it down and it bounces back, instantaneously. Each time it comes back slightly less and water over time, you get rutting in the road. But you can get experts in there and they'll probably argue between the two, but I think it's a good argument.
And I've got just a couple more questions.
Yep.
Firstly, on definition of forestry exotic, so that includes carbon farming.
So through the chair, yes, currently it is. I understand they're looking to create a separate category potentially for forestry carbon farming rather than timber.
So through the chair, the rules that determine how the valuers do their job and what categories they give, they're under review at the moment. And the Valuer General is discussing the option of introducing a different one, but that hasn't come through yet.
My concern would be someone say, this is just for carbon farming, so I'm not going to have any impact on the roading network and try and justify not collecting the rate. But then what would stop someone else, another buyer of that property, coming along and converting it to productive use?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so cool.
Okay.
Just for clarification, and hopefully it'll be helpful, what we're talking about here is different options that for collecting a fixed amount, regardless of, it's more about the distribution of that obligation rather than collecting more rates with one rather than the other, apart from the fact that we don't know how many properties we'd be collecting the rate over, which is a bit of a problem to establish the amount in the top line. Would that be right?
Have you not done you did the modelling on that in your report, didn't you? To show the impact of.
You've said that, QV is actively reviewing the properties that would qualify for a FE rate.
Yeah. So again, through the chair, that's correct. I mean, the QV has said they're aware of a number of properties in the district that have been purchased for forestry purposes that weren't previously forestry. So each time they review it, the number of properties in the area and the land value that would fall under forestry exemption. It's a dynamic industry and it'll go up and down over time.
So will we know that number before we set our rate?
Yes, we have to. So, yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, I have a couple of questions before. I think you had your hand up, didn't you?
Oh, thank you, Your Worship.
Hang on, I'm going to go first.
Oh, sorry, yeah. You'll be going first, Your
Well,
Worship.
I'm hot. Now, see, originally we set this only for a 6-year period. Was that because we had a catch-up thing going on? What was the reason for it?
So no, my understanding from reading that report is that that was based on the harvesting cycles predicted at the time and the state of the roads, expected that they only need to have that accelerated program for a period of 6 years to get the network up to standard.
So the other thing I was going to touch on is, I don't think about what trucks do when they drive on our roads. They pay a fuel tax and they pay a road user mileage, right? And they're doing that whether they're collecting metal from a quarry or milk from a farm or logs from a forest, right? So, because the thing that actually concerns me a little bit here is why aren't we charging targeted rates for all the other users and just forestry? I know it's nice to have the money. We need the money as a council, but it's all about the equitable situation of being even-handed, you know. And we talk about the yield, you know, the return on the properties is an important part of what we look at. And, you know, the return on the forestry is a very low return compared to dairy, for example, but they are paying more in general rate, which then gets used, you know, for the subsidy purposes for roading. So it is a complicated discussion, but how difficult is it to run? This is probably a question not for you, I guess, but if you're going to target all sorts of users, it complicates your whole rating system, doesn't it? You know, if we go and target dairy farmers, we go and target quarry owners. At the moment, we're just targeting forestry owners, and that's it.
I can answer that. My observation would be that you would, by targeting different categories, you would be increasing the number of people that would be coming to us with inquiries and concerns about why they've been chosen and justifying what the decision was. That would probably be the main thing around that. It's not too complicated in the way that we would choose the properties just by their categories again. But it would be more about the community's conversations that would come from it.
What I'm getting at is, if you're looking at user pays, the trucks are using the roads to collect produce and they're paying rates for all these entities. And yet we're going to target forestry specifically to take more money. And we've got to, I think we have to justify that actually. Anyway, next question.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I think that's a really good report. Thank you, Kurt. It's covered lots of different things around what other councils are doing, and I think that it kind of straightens out that double accounting for land value by actually showing that, you know, probably within the margin error on 6.7 and 5.9 being the land rate versus the yield in terms of NPV. It's basically shows that there is a direct relationship between land value and yield, which is what we would have expected because land valuation is based on its economic use. So then when you go to the point and go, well, if we throw the rate in there and, you know, get it down to 2.4, well, it does then on that basis, at some extent, it comes with a double accounting for land value. With the other referred to report, which is the WSP one, which then refers to the form one, was that all on Northland in general, or it didn't actually break out like for a separate category?
So, no, it was for Northland, the NGA, you know, the three Northland district councils. They did identify each council's network and that would be impacted by the forestry. So I do have that list now, and I'll provide you the list of roads that were identified by them that would be in the Kapa district that would be impacted by forestry.
Well, that'd be interesting to see that. Yeah, I mean, just coming back to what the Mayor was saying, I have to say up front, I'm not an advocate for special targeting for dairy or mining or whoever else. I mean, I know that far north have got a comprehensive list and they do things in an even-handed way, but I think it's a very complicated way of dealing with rating. And you can look at dairy and go, okay, well, it's got twice as much land as forestry, and therefore it's going to be spread across. If you did do it, it might not be very much per property, and we're not currently accounting for it, and it is obviously identified as an impact which has a similar impact per 1,000 hectares per annum as forestry, but we're kind of ignoring it. So yeah, I think we've kind of got a lot of information here today to digest. We probably have to run it around in circles a bit more to thresh it out. Thanks for the presentation. It's been really good.
Councillor Erin Wilson-Collins.
Thanks, Kurt. Yeah, great. Awesome report, and your presentation today really cemented what I believe you're trying to tell us. I just want to clarify what I'm getting from your report is actually where the inequity actually lies is the collected general rate from forestry blocks versus the impact for the roading system that the forestry industry is doing. If I picked that up right?
So all I'm demonstrating is, in the report, is the general rate value per hectare for dairy. I only use dairy as a comparator because that's a common one for order versus there. And then if you place the general rates based on land value for the same area, same value of land, the same area, they will pay 7 times more. Whether that's equitable or not is a...
So sorry, no, I'm not comparing forestry to dairy.
Yep.
Just the forestry. The rates that we take away the targeted rate. If we say, okay, we're receiving these rates from the forestry, but the impact on our roading system, the repairs and the maintenance that were identified back in 2015, that's actually, to me, that's actually where the inequity lies. Whereas if you look at dairy separately, so not necessarily comparing them, but looking at that separately, the report kind of says, well, we actually receive quite a large portion of rates from dairy because of the high land value. So the impact on the roads is probably taken care of in that package of rates. But over here, we've got a lot of impact on our roads and a lot less rating income because of the low land value.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, in summary, yes, that's what the report is highlighting.
Thank you. So I agree with there's a lot to work through. I'm also really fascinated by the Wairoa District Council. I've been reading a lot into that and the court process that they've been going through, because what I find fascinating about that, and carbon credit farming might be an interesting one to think about if that does change, if that does get its own category, because they're actually rating for the negative impact on their community. Not actually the road, like it's not actually about the roading network. It's actually about the negative impact that industry is having on their community, and that's what they're getting taxed for. And I just think that's a really interesting. If you're not following it, I suggest everybody does. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mayor, followed by Councillor Vincent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, just not carrying on dairy, but obviously you picked it for a reason. And my question is obviously related to why did you pick it? Because if you touch this, you are touching the whole nation. This is the bread and butter of the whole nation. And we don't want to be the first council unless there's another one who will tax them. So that's the first question. Second question, or whatever I was asking earlier on, in the identification, and Christine, you mentioned about that there are difficulties or whatever in getting to more. 98 properties is nothing in the whole district to have a targeted rate term. So what happened to the rest of the property and how many there are? I think we have to do some work on it. And that's the area which is possible. So can't we do that or what? Is it possible? What's your experience? Thank you.
So I guess through the chair, I mean, why I compared with dairy is because that's a common comparison used by the forestry industry. They always say, well, you're charging us and you tell us all the impact the forestry is having on the network. What about dairy? They have the same amount of impact. So I use them and it shows that in a similar area of land, they have a similar, from a traffic impact point of view, they have a similar impact to forestry. But then conversely, their land value is worth a lot more, so they pay a lot more general rates. So it's just a comparison. If you want, we can go and compare to all the other categories in there, but you're just going to get, all you're going to be able to tell you is what their average land value is, and therefore on average they pay.
I'll take one more question from councillor Vincent.
Well, thank you, Mr Mayor. Actually, I want to just give some direction, I suppose, if that's okay at this point. Firstly, looking at the various options, it seems to me that the status quo is a bit inequitable and we could do better. As far as striking a rate on whether or not a property has direct access to the state highway, that is a can of worms in the making, because we have lots of properties which have direct access to the state highway, so that could result in people requesting a discount on their, or discounted rate, whatever it's a residential, lifestyle or other rural property. And then in regard to quarrying, I think the argument could be quarries, to the extent that they supply metal for the roading network, are actually, while they are getting a private benefit, there is also a public good element to that. And so we
Right, we'll reconvene. Hopefully we've got, Alan has managed to get rid of our technical issues. And, we're back into the next item, which is road sealing. Sue was going to front that, was she?
We're dealing with the historic section now.
Back in the good old days.
So I was asked by the councillors to look at road sealing in different ways because it is, do get quite a number of complaints. And I know I've put down 3 roads there and I didn't see Andy's presentation. He's actually got 4 roads and he's talking about 20 million when my paper is talking about 12 million at this stage. But, and it's just that this is just to give you some options going forward. We don't have to make the decision now, but it's just to give you something to think about. So we've currently got a road sealing policy, which gives a threshold of 75% in agreement. So that means that if people on a road want their road sealed, if they can get, and the council helps them to correspond, 75% to agree, which is a reasonably high threshold, but it's a good threshold to have when the impact of what you're actually, the burden you're putting on people is quite a big burden to pay for a sealed road. And we've only had, I think, 1 approach to this council and didn't quite make the threshold. Secondly, we could actually put in, so this council has had a policy of not providing for any road sealing. We just say we don't do any, but we could actually put in 500,000 per annum or $1 million per annum, which is at the moment in our current budget is about 2.5% increase in rates. But then we could actually do some sealing. So that's another option that you have going forward, and everyone's paying for that to occur. Then the other way I thought of is a whole mix of funding, which is based on 33% that live on the road paying a targeted rate for 10 years, still quite a burden to them. A third of it also being paid by the general rate, which is everyone in the district, and a third by development contributions, which we collect over 10 years. So, but that relies on us basically likely to be, budgeting for it in the next 5 years to be done. And you're looking at 12 million here, but Andy's talking 20 million when you add Judd Road in. So that's just the 3 options that I could see that were possibilities. So, but I think you don't have to give me any guidance on this just at the moment. We will be going through roading later on. And I also think we'll probably be coming back to you on roading. So I think it's going to be a big topic for us to discuss.
Councillor Larson.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. You think so? I just want to make a couple of comments on this relation to those roads. And I think the first point is that the central section of Cairns is a huge historical issue. Not that big a job to actually fix it, but I just don't think we can leave it in that horrendous state that it is, with this narrow concrete strip and no water tabling, no crossings into properties, stopping halfway up the steep section and having this higgledy-piggledy single lane sealed piece through the middle. I think it needs fixing. I think it's an embarrassment, going on for about 15 years now. So that's just the point I want to make. As far as prioritising some roads, and we've got an example there with Lawrence, Cairns and Devish, what I would like to see is what the rates take is on each of those roads, because I think it's going to be a bit hard to justify picking roads that aren't paying their way and then say, well, we're going to prioritise them and a third's coming from general rate. We may do something like that, but actually I think we need to be able to justify it and saying we're collecting so much rates from these roads already, and all they're getting is a road like everybody else, but they're kind of paying their way. So I'd just really like to be able to justify that. Okay, how much are we collecting? How much are we going to collect over 10 years off each of these roads over that period, and see what the actual revenue we're getting from them, the annual rate is.
Mm.
And then we might go, wow, or we might go, maybe not.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so the question, just to, I suppose, give you some response, is that we still have the current rates we have to pay for. So if you do deem that, yes, Cairns ratepayers are paying, a great proportion, then someone else has to pay for the other roading. It's always an addition.
Thanks. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that I want, if we're going to do something like we do, rather than going, let's never do any seal extension because we don't get any subsidy from NZTA, and that just becomes we can never do anything. Whereas for people that are paying, you know, 5 or 6 grand a year each, and there's hundreds of them, I don't know whether we can always say that, but we have to justify that they're paying their own way, you know, 6 times over.
Yeah, thanks for that. So we'll take that and look at that. And any other questions?
I've got a list here of questions. So I've got Mark next, Anderson next, followed by Ash, I think it is. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I guess I just, with, like, for a blunt, and there are inequities and a difference, say, between a sewer rate and a roading rate is that with a sewerage rate, it's only the user on that property that gets the benefit of it. Whereas with a roading network, sure, there's a benefit to the people on that frontage, but there are also benefits to people who might not even be ratepayers, or they are ratepayers somewhere else in the district, and they have the convenience of being able to take that path that is in a better state to use. So I think that provides the basis for, I guess, opening the door to some form of general rate, or maybe a targeted rating area beyond just the actual property owners, which, of course, if you strip it down a bit further, with a bit of an acidic jam, isn't it, if it's an extra targeted rate. But there would be some justification for that. And I would also have thought that in terms of development contributions, that for that area, surely there must have been development contributions collected already, and the potential will be more as well. And that would be a logical place to include that in my thoughts. So that's just thoughts that occurred to me. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. Through you, I am aware that we have perhaps 300 places a year, less whatever number have already been committed, to encourage certain people from overseas if they invest sufficient sums in New Zealand. There is a measure of quantum by period, etc. But generally speaking, if they were to introduce $1 million for not less than 3 years, they have a very much improved chance, which might otherwise be denied them, of a residency in New Zealand. If we had a list of these $1 million investment possibilities in Kaiwaka, we would have, through the immigration people, the possibility of finding overseas people seeking a residence in New Zealand and the safe haven for their capital, which is probably already held outside China, that being the main source of people.
Sounds a good proposition to me, but I'll leave it to the economic development facilitator when that's
Another way of sourcing funding.
Yeah.
Councillor No.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When we took the bus tour, we were taken to, I think, was it Bickerstaff Road or something in Mangatroto, which was, we were told, was developed by the residents. What's that model? Is it possible to have that model replicated?
Judd Road, was it?
No, it was Jim.
Jumna Road.
Yeah, yes.
The school is and everything goes up and all, yeah.
My understanding was that that whole development was by a developer and the model is being replicated in Mangawhai Central at the very moment, but it's only where you can get a large developer to do that. So where we can, but most of the time, it's just a small block of land.
And also, if I could add from my background knowledge, there was also paid a financial contribution for roading, and that became the local share of subsidised
62%.
62% to, well, it might have been 59% at that time, to extend the seal from just past the high school on out to Jumna Road.
Beautiful. So, I mean, it'll be worthwhile looking at that and compare with what option we have.
We don't have that option.
Councillor Rachel Williams.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just to add to the roads that are mentioned on here with Keynes, Lawrence and Devich, I think as well, if you take into consideration that these are actually, they are detour routes, you know, when some things actually happen on the main highway or you can't get through into Mangawhai, we have slips. So you do go out Keynes Road and around. So it is actually a, you know, a connector road where you can actually come out and head, you know, keep heading to Kaiwaka. So I think if we look at it in that respect too, and the use of the road and you know, what can occur, I just think that's a good thing to keep.
Yeah, I think
as well.
I think it is great if we keep pushing Waka Kotahi for more funding because it's a totally different type of road. And when they close the Brindumans or whatever, they will potentially use that road. Yeah.
Good point.
Councillor Larson.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I've on the seal extension policy, the Black Swamp, not Black Swamp, the Raymond Bull Road, people that have tried it several times, or at least twice, I think, did lobby me reasonably extensively about it at the time and how it didn't work. I think that the thing, you know, whilst it is a burden on, can be seen as a burden in terms of having to pay a rate to do it. I think that the spend oftentimes is more than made up for by the capital value increase of the property now being on a sealed road versus being on a metal road. So I don't know that it's necessarily not a benefit to people to have their roads sealed. I think that their capital value, there'll be
as well.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, the total value, the land value and the capital value. So I think that, you know, there'll be some real estate statistics around that. I suspect you could end up 10 grand and 100 grand or whatever out of it. So I think that's a consideration. We need to decide where we want to be in the threshold, but any change we came up to, would that go out a consultation as a policy change with the long-term plan anyway? Would it?
So through the chair, I'm not suggesting a change to that policy at the moment. That's a roading policy that hasn't been, that is up for review, but I don't know who's actually, it'll be our roading team that are looking at that. I'm just telling you what the rules are now, and I definitely agree with you that there is a benefit in capital value, but there's still, as a council, you've still got to look at affordability. Just because people live on Keynes Road, Lawrence Road and Devich Road, do they have more money available to pay at more rates? So I suppose that's a consideration as well.
Sorry, I might have misled you there. I wasn't suggesting that we put a targeted rate onto those roads. What I wanted to know about them was how much general rate they were.
No, I understand that, but the last meeting.
For other roads where there is an initiated private seal extension, if we were to make changes to that policy, would it go out with the long-term plan for consultation to be?
My understanding of that policy isn't, I'd have to defer to the roading team, but they're in charge of that policy. I don't think they're going to do it before the LTP. And I think it's separate to the LTP, the policy. Like it doesn't have, it's not one of the LTP policies.
For you, Mr Mayor. So we don't technically have to consult on it. in the LTP as part of the LTP, which is what Sue's saying. However, if the council gave us direction that, they'd like us to revisit the threshold, then, we'd put that in front of you to decide, and we could consult on that as part of the LTP if we wanted to.
I think, my understanding was that council owned the policy and could initiate changes if it decided. Is that correct?
So if you give us feedback today to say that you'd like the threshold to be looked at, then we'll advise the NTA to do that and come back to you.
Okay, thank you.
There's some interesting questions here. I mean, when the valuations go out to people that live up James Road, etc., are their valuations affected by the quality of the roads?
Should be.
I'd have to defer to rating.
So they are, you're aware that they are?
My understanding, if I may assist, the unimproved value includes the value or the quality of the services available to the boundary.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And so, I mean, I'd like to add to what councillor Larson said. I think we need to be able to have a look at it and make sure that we're flexible as we're able to let communities maybe select this subsidy contribution system work. I mean, I know down at my cousin had a property down at Turn Point, and they were very frustrated because I think they were one person short.
You're correct. I think.
And there was also issues there of identifying contractors to do the work, and the community said, well, we'd like to go and select our own contractors because we think we can get it for a cheaper price. So there's a whole bunch of things there that we could look at. Bill? Yeah.
So three, Mr. Mayor, the only thing I'd say with any threshold is, all thresholds, you will be close at some point, regardless. So,
Oh, yeah, but in this case, one of them said, well, I'll pay twice to make up the one person that didn't want to pay, right?
If you don't mind, just on that point, because in the policy there are two components. There's a 50% capital payment, and then there's a targeted rate over 10 years. In order to get over the threshold for the capital payment, if people didn't want to pay it and you couldn't force them to pay it, well, other people would pick up some of the share. So anyway, exactly.
So just as far as the road selling policy, we'll get that looked at and brought back. Is that part of the revenue and financing?
Well, I'd have to defer to NTA and Dawn. Both Dawn and Andy are here today, so they have to schedule it into their work plan.
Yeah. So
come back to us.
Presenting this afternoon, so we'll get them to do that. I also just want to point out that I think Kames Road and Devitt Road in that area is part of that, of Andy's presentation, I believe, this afternoon. So we will talk about that then too.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, leave it at that. So you can leave and come back again, by the looks of it.
Can I just ask Sue, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. So as far as the ceiling and adding funding in for the ceiling, do we have any direction on that question? And Sue's put it up there, general rates, do you want to add funding in for ceiling or not? Is that?
Well, I think what that'll be determined this afternoon,
Right.
basically you work out your priorities,
Okay.
and then we'll try and work out what the dollars are, and then we might have to come back to you for how that's all going to be funded. Okay, so I think that might be longer.
Excellent.
Okay, so then,
Okay, you can stand down and stand up again.
okay. The next one is the potential museum targeted rate. And so you can, I think it was earlier this month, we had the Mangawhai Museum approach council about rating. They were looking at the prospect of forgiving the loan, which the previous council had already looked at and stated that wasn't an option and that they should really look at paying over 30 years and continue paying the interest until we sorted out the treasury policy, which we did last month as well. So, and they have continued to pay the interest on that loan, but they are finding it tight. We do have other rates for the Mangawhai Harbour, for the Dargaville CCTV and for the Ruai Hall. So this could be a rate they're asking for $20 to rate every Mangawhai person $20. But also they said in their papers that they're also looking at the potential for either reduced or no entry fee for people who live in Mangawhai, which to get people to come to the museum as well. and I only have visitors from out of district, or out of Mangawhai paying for the museum itself, which obviously be a lot of visitors at Christmas time. The risk, so they're asking for a separate target rate. They've settled, they are proposing $20 because they say that's reasonable. We could put that out for consultation and ask the community, and we either get a resounding no or yes, just like the CCTV. The risk is other museums might ask us to collect, but each you have to look at on those merits. And that's all. Probably just it's their wish to have a target rate. I'm just bringing it back to you again.
Yeah.
Asking, do you want to pursue it or what do you want to do?
Councillor No?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like some information. Whenever you ask for something, I'd like some financials to see what is the suffering coming from, whether they have employees, not volunteers, like most of the museum, Matakohi and Dagaville are working on tank. And also the fact that whether the community, when you go to community, that's another story. Why everybody should pay for this rights, you know? What's the logic? It's already existing. It's CCTV and all other things were to provide a service. So that's why they were introduced. Now there's a museum, he's not peer-shaped, but he's not doing well. And why the rest of the people who may not like to use the facility should pay for it. That's the question I would like to know.
Through the chair, they did give us their financial accounts and we did, and I think I have got their financial accounts, so I can share those with you. They're not in a strong financial position, and the issue they've got is the Deering boat that they've got up there. They want to extend the museum, and that's primarily what I understand the issue is, that if they can have some target rate, it's some assurance of some permanent monies they've got, they can borrow more money to then fund their extension.
This is a classic case to me of it's the sort of things that are creeping up on us as a community, but we've got huge issues with park maintenance, the Maz facility, the museum, the Deering. I think my direction would be to consult with the public about what they'd like to do to maintain those facilities, because I think that's becoming an important issue and an important challenge in the district as it grows. Councillor Wynne?
Thank you. Yeah, I just wondered if it sets a precedent, like, would this then become the precedent for other charitable trusts? I mean,
The precedent already exists. The precedent already exists. Targeted rates for catchment areas already.
That's right, we're managing that.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, so the very first ones, when we started the revenue and financing and talked about rates, I brought you the 3 targeted rates. I talked about their financial position. That was for the Mangawhai Harbour Board, the Dargaville DCBC, whatever, and the Ruawai Hall organisation. So what I did this year was I asked them for their financial accounts. I asked them to prepare a forecast going forward. So I wanted to make sure they weren't just hoarding the money and what was actually happening with it. I don't believe they're at that situation yet. And so it would be managed. That's how we look at it every 3 years, look at what the rate is. And that's when I came to you and said the Dargaville CCTV, they wanted 5% increase. The Harbour Restoration Society wanted $80 per ratepayer. The Ruawai Hall, they were happy with the same amount for the next 3 years. So this one will be managed the same way, that every 3 years, look at where their accounts are and do the same thing, ask them for forecasts and what they're going to spend the money on, because you don't want to be given, because that's the risk. You don't want them hoarding too much money. That's basically the community's money that they're expecting them to use, get value.
You have a plan of what you're going to spend there.
Yes, so that's what we're trying to make sure.
Okay.
So, and it's really, like the Mayor says, whether the community wants to maintain it.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you. I really feel for the Mangawhai Museum. They came and presented to the previous council about the situation that they're in, where they borrowed this $100,000. And I don't know how the deal was done back in the day, but I feel like giving them an interest-only loan was probably a bit of a disservice, and it's made it really tough for them to then come up with $100,000 to repay. So I appreciate the efforts to try and come up with further solutions for themselves. But I agree, though, I think the Mayor I assume we would consult with the community, we would need to. So I would be happy to do that, to move it forward and do the consultation.
Councillor Levinson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just occurs to me, how much does the museum pay in regards to rates and rental?
I'll defer to,
That I should have given me the opportunity to prepare for, I'm sorry.
defer to the revenue officer.
Because I am aware that the Kauri Museum, I think, pays basically peppercorn rental. And I'm not too sure what the deal is here, and that's a factor to take into account.
So the lease, my understanding is peppercorn, but I don't know about the rates.
So that's a contribution from council in effect.
It is a contribution from council that isn't recognised anywhere.
And my main concern is the precedent implications of this, but however we can put it to the community, and we flagged that as an issue.
It would be a rate that we'd be proposing over the same area as the restoration, harbour restoration rate.
All right, any further questions? Thank you, Sue.
Okay.
Okay, what's the time? Oh, plenty of time. Let's go through it. Let's have another one. So we'll move to item 5, which is activity profiles for roading footpaths. Welcome, Andy from NTA. Self-defeating.
Right, here we are back at activity profile with budgets attached. So I just wanted to talk to you first of all about how this funding versus spending works. First of all, where you're up to. So we've been through, all the ideas have been gathered and presented for feedback, and this is all the items you would like to spend money on. That's all in the in the right hand part of the weighing scale. And the activity managers have been back and talked to you and received your direction, and they've been forming their budgets based on this. And finance has been bringing you rating options and where the funding comes from, and that's all on the left of the weighing scale. The important thing to note is that council finances are very different to business, for example, and I found it tricky to get my head around this because I've come from the private sector as well. So councils predominantly use rates for the community to spend on what the community wants. There's no new products and flashy marketing to increase sales. The bucket to spend on the left is decided by you, and what activities and how much you allocate to each activity is up to you, but they must balance. So the activities are on the right. So you can have a smaller or a large bucket if you like, and of course there's legislation around affordability of the bucket on the left because you don't want to make life difficult for your communities. But you'll notice I've called them wild cards, two cards at the bottom, which are other areas of funding. So central government, external funding, for example, during the COVID and the provincial growth funds, we got a lot of external funding, which of course adds to the left-hand side and do more on the right-hand side. And then there's the other wild card, which is more of the financials, and Sue's team knows this far more. I keep it real simple in my head, and that's loans and how depreciations are used and reserves and all of those things. So those are things that can add to the left and allow you to do a bit more on the right. Whatever happens, both sides have to balance, and what you spend it on is decided by you. Roading and footpaths is a great first activity because it uses a lot of external funding from Waka Kotahi. So it's a really good one to segue into Andy, who will now step you through the process and prioritisation. There you go.
notes.
You, hold the line. Need its,
Grab my laptop.
yes, you can bring it up, but you can grab his laptop.
My notes. Sorry. That should have been. Routine technical difficulties.
Those speaking notes have to ad lib now.
No, I'm passionate about this and I probably can, but I did. It's very succinct information about this. Thanks, Dawn.
Share.
Big time. You're right about the precedent. Precedent, you're right about the precedent we are putting in. 8.
First, thank you for having me here today. I'm going to run you through what we've been doing to develop a transportation plan for Cypress LTP. If there are any questions, work through the projects that are standing out as if need some sort of movement on what we're trying to achieve. So even though this is an LTP light, we've been developing a plan to transform KDC's transport network. And my recommendation is that we begin implementation, otherwise we'll be another 3 years down the track from achieving the vision council set. The plan's been developed in collaboration with KDC communities through the likes of our AMP shows, our community days, and online consultation sessions. KDC's engagement team have been helping with, and they've been helping us create a plan that satisfies all our external funding partners' needs so that we can get the right investment levels into Cypress District. The plan's mapped out in the Transport AMP. As above, it links through the council statutory LTP requirements under the Local Government Act, the Regional Land Transport Plan, and the government position statement for investing in transport. I've shown this slide so you can see how council's vision is reflected through the investment process and how it aligns compared to the other two councils. Bearing in mind that the GPS is still a draft and hasn't been officially released, and neither has the RLTP. This is a brief overview of what Kaikoura currently has. At the moment, about 920 million dollars worth of transport assets, 1,500 k's or 1,574 k's of roads, up of sealed and unsealed, bridges and large culverts, drainage systems, footpaths, cycleways, which we're in the process of completing at the moment, street lights and signs. Bringing you this slide to show the bid for road maintenance funding as it impacts some of the capital program from an asset renewal perspective. Approximately 60% of what we plan to do is being capital expenditure. Our bid for funding assistance for maintenance and renewals for the 21-24 National Land Transport Fund was 57 million, And we received about 53 million at 62% funding assistance rate. So that's about 20 million of local share. Our new bid for funding assistance for maintenance and renewals for 24 to 27 is based on council's want for more dependable roading. It's around about $145 million, a 3-year window. Again, at 62% funding assistance rate, so that's around about $55 million of local share. Now, this is a significant increase. It's about 254% increase. But in this next slide, I'll explain where those increases are and why. So in detail, the main reasons for increase in maintenance is to accommodate the renewal activities. A bit more in drainage maintenance so that we can sort out the surface water channels, poorly aligned, undersized and missing culverts situation we have around the network. More sealed road rehabilitation and resurfacing work to stop the deterioration and excess potholes that we experienced through the weather events of the last couple of years. More unsealed road rehabilitation to improve the network by using our improved rehab process that we showed you last week. And a large increase in structures because we've got a big bridge program ahead of us on bridges such as the one in Hakaru that's on the speed restriction and has those bollards and stuff around it at the moment. Overall, the 253% increase across the 3 years is basically broken down as you see it there to achieve the wants of the council. As you can see on the left in the 21-24 period, the green boxes show the amount of work that we bid for with Waka Kotahi, and we estimated 2.5% escalation. This was before the impacts of COVID and the increasing inflation costs that the country is currently facing. The reality is that the middle boxes, which show 12.4, 19.1 and 25.1% increase in escalation costs, is where we actually landed. So going forward, we've to do the same volume of work. It's quite a significant step change in the orange boxes, with also the shaded section of the orange boxes being a step change and contract change in about a year's time. The blue sections I've added in there show the impact of the desire of council to improve its situation and have more dependable roading. The improvement program and options assessment slide you see here is the same slide that I brought back in August, except back in August we were on the red and the brown boxes, and following the feedback from you all, we've now gone back and worked through the prioritisation program as best we can, developed and assessed things, and we're now in the brown and the blue boxes here today to seek information and confirmation of priorities back from you. Capital program includes things such as, the improvement program includes things such as road upgrades, as we just discussed in the road sealing policy paper from Sue previously, walking and cycling for new footpaths in our townships, cycling, so shared paths, so continuation of like the works on Mangawhai's shared path and the Dargaville Surf project. Resilience, we want to do investigations into our one-lane bridges and build a program that goes and addresses the bridges where there's a need to provide better reliability in the network. It includes improving state highway detail routes, so we've got the two here, Cove Road, Kaiwaka Mangawhai Road and Paparoa Oakley, and improve some freight routes or some heavier traffic routes. There's quite a few local intersection upgrades that have come out of the work with our communities where people are seeking much better sight lines and visibility for road safety purposes. We then have our safety and urbanisation program, so that is our township gateways, so making our towns vibrant on the approaches so people know they're in Kaipara and in the towns that really matter in this world for us, as well as safer speed environments. There's state highway upgrades, and again, this is pretty much in all our towns, but it's about a recommended program that we push forward to Waka Kotahi so that they include us in their thinking. Because at the moment, we don't see much of what they develop for their state highway investment program until the RLTP is put forward to the RTC. And then there's our recreational trails such as Kaihu Valley Trail, the continuation of those to provide our communities things where they can go out and enjoy our district safely and have fun. Our program is broken into three priorities: the first priority, second priority, and third priority based off what we've evaluated. And this is where I'm seeking feedback from you. So for West Coast and central areas, everything that's in that green box is coming back as. And the questions I have around that. I have questions around that for you all soon, and I'll bring those to the table when we go through the individual items. We've pulled Dargaville aside and singled it out because of its importance to supporting our surrounding rural communities. Being a larger centre, it provides facilities such as agricultural shops and those kind of things, as well as a vibrant town centre that needs some love to make it more appealing to businesses and future growth for our district. I'm hoping you've all had a chance to see these maps.
Yeah.
Oh, should have said.
We'll ask the questions after the.
Yeah, I'll come to
Thank you.
time shortly, Ash. So Tamatea Ward is our inner harbour ward. We've got quite a few significant projects in there to improve levels of service in the green boxes or in the green numbers there. Then Kaiwaka and Mangawhai. And again, quite a large number of projects feedback from our communities, including the likes of improving Cairns Road and Lawrence Road and things like that. Where that leads us to is about, and if we choose to, $930 million of investment in today's money to bring Kaipara into the future, give it a transport network that it really deserves. My recommended program for road upgrades is there, as you see it on the screen. I know that the cost is different from what Sue was talking about in the road sealing policy, and there's good reasons for that. So we can seal a road like we did in Poto, and that's about $1 million a kilometre. However, Lawrence Road, Cairns Road, Devitt Road and Judd Road, which I think are our first four off the ranks, they need more than just road sealing. They need the right level of service. They need to have walking and cycling facilities so people can walk to their neighbour's house safely. They need good drainage. They need things like curb and channels and sumps and culverts. So all of that is coming at additional cost on top of the sealing activity, which is why I sort of estimate in today's money about $20 million over the 3 years to achieve those three roads. So my questions about that slide is the direction right? Is there anything that you know that we've missed? Is there anything you would like changed? How much we're willing to spend, and are there any questions about it?
Okay, we'll start with Councillor Larson.
Nash. Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'd come back to our draft long-term plan outcome, which is dependable roading. And I'd like to find ways for us to have good basic roading and, you know, have serviceable sealed roads where we can put them in without being gold plated. And I don't think that those country roads need to be sort of urbanised with cycleways and footpaths and stuff. I think we just do the basic can and spread the money a lot further than rather try and do a gold plated job. Feedback.
Ash Mayer, followed by Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a few questions, sorry. One, obviously, you gave the list of our assets, which is $921 million, almost $1 billion, based on the replacement value, not their depreciation value, if we want to build something. And now you're asking for similar amount, $980 million, which is essentially the value of the total assets in Kaipara, to do a few things over 30 years, right? My question to you is, one, we are also sitting on a lot of money, $67 or $70 million unspent. And you also mentioned that there's a 58% escalation cost in the third year. So my question to you is, obviously, I would say no to any big figures coming out of our head, because they're not, unless they're spent, they don't make a sense. and the escalation will eat up all the money we collect from the ratepayers. So also a little bit thing there, you also mentioned about linking with cycleways, as the Councillor Larson pointed out, there's a development for Dargaville Racecourse, and you have put actually project for State Highway 14 in priority level 2 to link to the town, which will be like 20-30 millions. All those projects, there are quite a few projects, we'll have to go one by one. So I won't waste your time on it to see whether the general ratepayer should fund it or whether the developer should fund it, things like that. One more thing on the loop buses, which you have proposed for Dargaville and Mangawhai. I would like to extend actually a little bit of more spending, because I was in RLTP and we are looking at electric buses because Auckland has it. So I'd like to have two, one from Mangawhai to Auckland, one from Dargaville to Auckland on a daily basis, which will cover all the sectors in between. So I propose that, and I would like it to be in the LTP as well. Yeah, thank you.
Right through the mayor. So I just wanted, there's a couple of things there.
Yeah.
Councillor Nair. So the first one I'd like to address is the rural residential living. So those roads in Mangawhai here that are rural, and also Judd Road and Mongasaroto, they service rural residential lifestyle, not rural roads. There is denser housing there. We have in our district plan and our future spatial plan and district plan stuff, the ability for those sections to be quite considerably smaller. So there's going to be kids walking around there. There's going to be kids walking to their neighbour's house or their mate's house 2 k's down the road on their push bike that we need to be able to move around in those regions safely. If we just seal those roads, we don't create the right level of service. We don't create a safe environment in those roads. I agree. There's lots of other roads that service our communities that need to be sealed, and those don't need the same level of service. They definitely come at a much lower cost. But I think we need to probably have a more in-depth discussion about why those 4 roads stand out. So if we pick on Judd Road and Mongasaroto as an example, Judd Road links Fokker Street to Bickerstaff Road to the back of the high school. The high school uses that road as part of its cross-country course, but at the moment the kids run on the road in amongst milk tankers and log trucks and all those other things. Is that a safe environment for our council to be provisioning for the children of our future?
So anyway, my question was not related to those 4 roads. My questions were all embracing 900 or $1 billion of ratepayers' money to be spent. And as Councillor Larson said, I'm just saying that let's do the basic first, and the road will be safer, no doubt about that, whether you spend that money or not.
It will be safer for cars, but they won't be safer for people overall.
Yeah. So the one on State Highway 14, the 3 kilometers on a highway from, racing club, Dargaville Racing to the town will be very unsafe for everyone. I can tell you that. Thank you.
Yeah, that State Highway 14, it's not a local council road. So it needs to be
discussed here.
Sorry?
You have proposed it in the.
So.
Yeah, thank you.
Through the mayor, the projects that are in there might not necessarily be funded by Kaipara. So as I said in the beginning, we're trying to identify the areas of concern from our communities so that Waka Kotahi sit up and listen to what our communities are saying. That our council has some weight in the regional and national land transport plan development so that Waka Kotahi do the right thing by Kaipara.
Yeah.
At the moment, and I've been in the asset manager for nearly 5 years, it'll be 5 years in November. So this is my second RLTP for KDC. We've always played second fiddle in Northland. There's never been any significant state highway investment plan for Kaipara roads, for the Kaipara sections of the state highway. And our communities have come and told us that through this business case process. And all those dots in that map that are located on the state highway is our way of trying to get our voice out to them to say, hey, guys, listen to us.
Yeah, so this amount is just a clarification, 980 million, whatever it is the total cost of these projects. It is funded 62% or whatever by Waka Kotahi. So it's actually 400 million you're asking, right?
No. So again, some of the projects are state highway projects that we want Waka Kotahi to sit up and listen to and implement into their plan, which we don't contribute to, other than through the consultation in our LTP. Our communities saying to us, we want this stuff done.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Vincent?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just follow on from that immediately. So that means those ones where you've identified intersections with state highways, you'd be looking for Waka Kotahi to fund those? Okay, because I think of the ones I'm most familiar with, yes, there's something about them that really you'd have to fix up something on the state highway rather than the council road in order to improve visibility, say, or whatever. Yeah, okay, that wasn't my main question. I think if we go back a year or so, we were being told by our engineers that to upgrade an unsealed road to sealed standard, you're talking in the range of $500,000 to $800,000 a kilometre to achieve that. And now you're saying it's about $1 million a kilometre to achieve that. So in these papers on page 49, you're saying for rural wide walking and cycling, Mangataota walking and cycling, Bickerstaff Road walking and cycling, it's $3 million for a shared path walkway, cycleway. And then also with new roads, you're costing them out. So it's new roads starting from Greenfields, $8 million a kilometre. That just seems to me tremendously out of whack. And I'm sympathetic to what Councillor Larson's saying about how we need to find ways of getting the optimum result, not the ultimate result, sort of thing. In terms of like, you know, give us a Holden suitable, not a Ferrari suitable sort of a job. And $3 million a kilometre for a shared cycleway, that just kind of blows my mind.
Made through the mayor.
Yeah.
So that's what our Mangawhai shared path is costing us.
Yeah, right. So that's exactly.
That's
so
real money today in this world. That's what it's costing us per kilometre, which is the numbers we've transposed into those.
I would suggest you need to find another way.
Yeah.
And it might be not to the same standard as the Mangawhai shared pathway, which is in a major urban area. Can we not find another way for those other areas?
I made through the mayor though, we have standards that we have to build these things to, safety standards. And if we don't adhere to those standards and we have somebody injured or killed, then it is councils will end up standing in the coroner's court explaining why they didn't do it and caused significant problems. And it's a really tough situation to be in.
Because I mean, I think that rate would probably encapsulate, $2 million roundabouts, for instance, which might skew the numbers a bit. I'm not sure. It just,
I may also through the mayor, so the Oto Road project was about 11 kilometres of unsealed road transformed into sealed, and that cost us about $8 million, 8.06 million. In fact, it was about 8.7 million by the time we do the second coat seal and stuff. So we have to do the second coat seal, or we don't get Waka Kotahi subsidy on future maintenance, etc. So that was 2 years ago. So when you apply escalation costs, and the sector is extremely expensive now. And so I agree, we do needs to be better at delivery, but and
find ways of cutting out cloth better.
Real figures, what's coming to. These are costs plucked out of the air, and the $8 million greenfield cost, our transportation consultant that helps put a business case that I need to bring to council as well for you to have review of. That's real construction costs from around New Zealand, not just from Northland.
Thanks for that.
Thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I just want to speak to the Mangawhai shared path point in that it's kind of a special one-off. We struck the jackpot through good political networking plus outstanding staff work on leveraging that money, and landed something that we could have never reasonably have contemplated. And I don't remember I might be wrong, but from my memory, we had like a district-wide footpath budget of about $300,000 or something for the whole district at the time, and we landed something here with like $10 or $12 million. A fantastic outcome from everybody. Lucky, right place, right time, right strategy. I don't think we can compare a one-off urban project like this to small rural locations. The standard might be that we still have to build them everywhere like this to get them funded or to meet our requirements, maybe we just can't afford to build them. That's what they cost. I just want to see good basic roads that people can drive on. And if we can have walking tracks and stuff as well, well, great, but I don't think we'll be building 3 metre wide shared paths very. Too expensive. Thank you.
I mean, if you look at, different cut and cloth, you can have it in different places. If you look at the bicycle track they've built between Waipu and Waipu Cove, for example, that's totally metal, isn't it?
Yes.
And, that's sufficient for that community in terms of the amount of use it gets, people off the road and gives them safety. So there is obviously flexibility in what we can do, I guess, hopefully. And I think that's probably what Councillor Larson's getting at is,
And maybe,
you know, we can't afford the gold plated stuff every week. We need to look carefully at what we can get, which is the basic need, you know? Yeah. Any further question? Oh, you've got to continue. Thank you.
Yeah, there's 3 more slides.
I thought you were going to say slide 3 of 50.
No, there's only 3 more slides. 5 more slides of program. So for walking and cycling improvements, in the appendix A and B, there's minor and major capital program improvements. Footbridge connection in Kaiwaka, some stuff around Bickerstaff Road, around the school parking. Missing sections on State Highway 12, Gorge Road, Ribeiro Drive, Bailey Street. Quite a few projects in there that stand out as needing prioritised further, but are priority number 1 in the community's eyes already.
that's good.
Councillor Vincent?
I think, Mr Mayor, so you've referred to Gorge Road in that slide. So is that the previously discussed walkway or footpath or shared pathway from Woodland Road through to Gorge Road, or along Gorge Road to the school? Okay, cool. So it is there. Thank you.
That's a no.
Thank you. So in terms of priority, if you go to Kaipara, West Coast or whatever, you have put in resilience as a second priority. State Highway 12 and State Highway 14.
Sorry, just where are you exactly? Which slide?
On the individual maps.
On the individual map.
Back to the maps?
Yeah. So is Kaipara this
Next slide.
West Coast?
This is the next slide. Resilience is in the next slide.
Yeah, okay. Let's go to the next slide. Doesn't matter. It's not this one, next one.
Yes, yes.
This is the slide, Kaipara District Council, PBC, West Coast, Central. Anyway, you talk about all those things which you talk about other areas is walking, cycling. First priority is the first walking, cycling for whatever reason, and safety. But second priority is flood resilience and is State Highway 12 and 14 flood resilience improvements. I'm just saying we gotta get our priorities right. Some of the things are like even the State Highway 14 and Hokianga Road. I talk about it 100 times. It is Wakakotai, but you have to drive it. And Steve Mutton said he's happy to come. You have to go to him and say, do it. So we have to do things for Kaipara, not that who does it. So you are the driving force. You go to them and make it happen. Things on, because we have this State Highway 14 and 12 going all through, you know. So you have to, yeah, first priority, not second priority. Thank you.
Do you have any further questions?
So, if I may continue, Great Route development has been signalled as a key for heavy vehicle and bypass detour, state highway detour resilience has been signalled as quite a key thing that Kaipara needs to improve not only its own district, but allow for movement in and out of Northland when things go wrong here. So this may not necessarily be Kaipara's investment, but we've put it into the business case to improve Cove Road, Kaiwaka Mangawhai Road, and Papara Oakley, which we're already in discussions as an NTA with Waka Kotahi around. It provides that much critical needed highway until whatever happens with the Brindilans happens. Not only that, but where it gives us the opportunity to connect into Mangawhai Central from the western side of Mangawhai, which then helps us to decongest Mangawhai as well. Helps with the traffic holiday congestion problems we see here, because it gives people viable alternative options around the town without having to drive the whole length of Molesworth Drive. And it also provides economic opportunity in Kaiwaka. So the businesses in Kaiwaka are looking at how they can connect better to the town and how they can expand and grow their businesses. And by doing some of these things, that will enable that to happen in a not too distant future. But again, these are projects that might not necessarily be Kaipara's funding. It's about trying to get Waka Kotahi to buy in on this.
So, members' information, it's like $50 million, was it, for Code Road improvements, and Papara Oakley was 45 or something. I think the difference was because of the cost of the bridge improvements, is that right?
Yeah, there's a big cost on those bridge improvements, the Hakaru and then the two one-lane bridges on Cove Road themselves. But there was, I think, in the blue books that the NTA put forward was about $85 million.
Yeah, I had a meeting yesterday, just for members' information. I had a meeting yesterday with David Parker, Steve Mutton from Waka Kotahi, and Vince Coccarello from Whangarei District, and Willowgen Prime. And they were talking about those improvements being quite important, but we haven't got that funding nailed down and done yet. It's still it's mooted as being important. Yeah.
I think whatever happens on Saturday might be influential on all of that.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Councillor Vincent.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just one thing. Thank you, Andy. You mentioned the Papara Oakley improvements, and I didn't see, because that was what I made a note about. I didn't see them there, and I know there's been previously discussion about a funding package coming for that upgrade. So I'm just confirming that is part, even though it hasn't been mentioned.
So it's mentioned in the regional land transport plan, as well as in the business case, about providing the much needed inland freight route for when the Brindilans tries to slide off the side of the planet.
And that would
rains.
Two laning the one lane bridges there too.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor No.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just talking of bridges, would it be possible to include the 3 bridges in Dargaville, to have some kind of, when you're talking walking cycle way, to have some kind of attachment so that they can actually cross the bridge? They are highways, like, coming into Dargaville from 12 and from 14, all those bridges. It literally is impossible to, I tried walking yesterday, I could have been killed, because you go in the opposite direction, that's the only way you can go. No one is coming, you go for, it's not on the right path, there's no place. So can we include something, an overhang or whatever possible on those 3 bridges, so people can actually cross them?
Yeah, so through the mayor, they are in Appendix A and they are in the Dargaville plan already.
So is it a first priority, second or third?
Again, it's not a Kaipara asset, it's a state highway asset, so we can't invest our money on them. All we can do is.
Yeah, just follow up with.
With Waka Kotahi, yes. So,
thank you.
So I think through the mayor, respectfully, what I think I'm hearing you saying, Ash, is you're in agreement that these state highway locations are super important for our West Coast. Extremely important that we target conversations with Waka Kotahi and try and get their state highway.
Well, I'm not talking about any particular development or the merits of it, but all I'm saying is the 3 bridges which are there, they should be possible to be walk crossing and bike crossing, whatever that option. And that's not expensive if you're talking a little patches of that, yeah.
Yeah, so and through the mayor, we've got lots and lots of state highway locations identified in Appendix A and identified in the maps.
Yeah.
And you're saying, what I'm hearing you say is that
the bridges,
the bridges are important.
Yes.
Those state highway locations like.
Yeah, very important. Yeah, thank you.
Are
yeah.
Right, any further questions?
Don't pause any longer.
Well, thank you very much. This will be a record short meeting.
Well, Andy delivers.
Yeah,
The new standard.
That's the new.
So we've still got 2 slides to go.
oh, two slides.
Yeah. Before we start.
In 2 more and then 2 more.
I'm sorry, Mr. Brown, I think I got pushed a little bit by councillor Larson there.
Sorry for my enthusiasm.
Continuing on, the next piece of the puzzle is the road safety plan, and that really is about providing dependable roading and prosperous economies and a healthy environment with affordable living for our team, our communities. What we've got is about $6.62 million plan for the first 3 years of all of this. Most of it gets funded from Waka Kotahi's low cost, low risk program, which is the Appendix B that you see. That doesn't really need significant justification and that's where the linkage back through the district AMP is, the transportation AMP. So having those programs of work in the AMP, if the funding's available under the land transport, have signalled that's our program, that's what we want to do. And we have tools that help us prioritise those programs. Some quite cutting edge tools that have been developed here specifically in Northland by some consultants and the Northern Transportation Alliance teams are seen as industry best practice, in fact, quite cutting edge technology to be able to identify where the scary spots on our networks are. Moving on, there's intersection upgrades, so both again state highway and local roads. So we will put some of the local road ones forward, but we will also put into the RLTP, hopefully through Waka Kotahi, some significant state highway local road intersection upgrades. And you see there's a big list there, particularly State Highway 12 and 14.
I can't read that anymore. I wanted to ask you about the intersection at the top of Tara Road that everyone's concerned about in the district.
Yes.
Is that on there?
So that forms part of the bypass improvement route. So we've got Honorary Road, which we know is a safety issue at the bridge at State Highway 1. We have our Kowaka Clothing brethren wanting to improve their business opportunities and expand their business. So the intersection upgrades basically start from there and head all the way back this way, including that one at Garbalino.
Yeah, it's a shocker.
Tara Garbalino.
Yeah,
there it is.
Cove, Garbalino, Tara, that whole junction through there. Pretty Councillor Larson, right point you raised through the NTA about 2 weeks ago is bang on. We need to do something in the short term, but we need to have something in the bigger vision of what are the priorities through there and how does it function better and how does it enable people, as I say, to get people to not have to drive Molesworth Drive. They can get around much faster on those western routes than here.
Oh, if you don't mind that you wish just on that point, yeah, I think you're quite right. I mean, it's the matter of getting North Power to move one pole a little bit and do 2 hours of cutting a batter, and she's good to go in the meantime.
So I will progress that as a standalone in this current financial year.
Right.
But we need to plan for the bigger improvements through there. And then we've got the neat bit of it, and I think this is the bit that our communities are really singing out for, is our township improvement plans. So likes of Victoria Street through Dargaville, Bailey's Beach, stuff here in Mangawhai around Alamar Crease and all the things. Our communities are saying we want these nice, bright, vibrant spaces, and the gateway signage and threshold treatments for all our towns. Make our towns look lovely on the way into them. Make people want to stop here and spend money in our businesses, make our communities thrive. There's also a wayfinding program as well. We've had a lot of input from our marae and our iwi constituents, and they're wanting signage that points them out so that it opens up opportunities for them so that people stop and stay.
Yeah, I had visions of that our trying to grow these smaller districts. I'm quite supportive of that fact that it would be nice if people could drive into somewhere like Paparoa and see a nice with a website, what's here, come and live in Paparoa type stuff, We've got Sahi out there, it's a way of communicating that we want our district to welcome people to help it grow.
The last piece of our puzzle for the LTP going forward is that the NLTF is never big enough when we go into a moderation process.
Is this taken out of an AA meeting?
Moderation, yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's abstinence, isn't it? So yeah, the Land Transport Fund, the National Land Transport Fund that the government give to Waka Kotahi to administer has to deal with the 73 councils and the state highway programs. And it's never big enough to accommodate everything. We get our bid moderated, it's inevitable. And so then we need to start having conversations about what we're going to do about the lack of funding. So in simple terms, all assets are impacted with reduced levels of service through reduced investment. Specific assets get moderated potentially. We do, we might choose to maybe hold off on a program of work. Or is there a bit of a combination of all of the above, or do we fund things, the shortfall of unassisted, as the same as Auckland Transport and Auckland Council do? Bearing in mind that there is other buckets of money that come up over the course of a 3-year period, and the intention is if we get these projects into the plan, even though we might not be able to afford them or might not get funding assistance, that gives us the off-the-shelf type environment like we had with our PGF investment. So when the other buckets of money from government come up, we can go and dabble in that world and hopefully get some additional support.
That's good.
Okay, any other questions? Is that it? Is it any? No? Yes? Feedback and questions? Any further feedback and questions?
I can,
Councillor Nair.
thank you, Mr. Chair. I can just give a little bit of feedback from the meeting we had, workshop actually, with Waka Kotahi and RTC, with the 30 years Arataki, which is looking at 30-year plan, just in line with what we're talking about. And there are tons of money available. When you talk about level of service, when you ask for funding, it all depends on, I don't know how you grade these level and if there's a moderation required or not, but there are ways and means to get more money. So that's what we talked about, and that's the way we're going to pursue. So you'll get that information from them anyway, but we are looking at not going by silo mentality, but look at that whole picture and get the money. Yeah, that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Or if I may, through the mayor, I agree. There is lots of external funding sources available over time. And I think that's where we have to map out that priority number one.
Yeah.
Those maps for our 4 areas of our district into the 10-year plan. Get that right in the LTP so that it's there, so that we can say, hey, we've got this one.
Yeah.
Or we've got this other one.
Councillor Owen, what's some comments?
Thank you. I thought last time round, and I could have this wrong, and I could be too early in the piece, these beautiful graphs that we get, these tables of all the different projects, when do we get the information of what is actually funded by us and what is funded external, like what we're trying to get externally? Does that still to come for us?
Since I worked through with Sue's team.
Right, okay. So at this stage, we're just saying, do we want these projects done? We'll work out how we pay for them afterwards. Is that right? We're not committing right now. If we say, yeah, this is great and they love it, $900 million.
Yeah, so we still have to go through our.
We're not saying that the ratepayers are going to pay for that. It's.
Right, that's why
there's a bigger picture that we're looking at here.
that's why I'm here, because we have to be realistic that people can afford.
Yes.
And the town put out. And so I just want to paint the picture, because this is part of, and to make sure, like in the revenue and finance, when we've captured anything, or there's anything else you want brought back to, because what's happening at the moment is, with the current legislation, is we've got 3 wards going. There's a whole lot of overheads that we're going to have to pay for that are potentially not going to be, we're not going to get any funding from central government. We could get some funding, we might get nothing. So that looks like it could be up to $1 million. So that's our increase there. Then we've got a whole lot of nice projects that people have been talking about, but we haven't actually seen, and this is the first time that Roading has bought some of those capital projects, and there'll be other capital projects or programs
that other teams want, like libraries, mobile library service, they come with their own costs. So, and their increases. Then we've got, so what's happening with water, with Three Waters going, is that our urban properties are going to lose targeted rates. So they're going to be charged independently by the NTA, and that's going to be at a lower level. So they could benefit, and we're not going to be told till November what the benefits are, but they could have a benefit of, say, $500 a household. What Andy's been talking today, even on just repairs and maintenance and renewals, is an extra $10 million a year, which if you take over, take the subsidy, over 15,000 ratepayers, it's about 670. Now, that's not how it works because it's on land value. So you've got your rural people are going to bear the brunt of a lot of these costs because they're all based on the land value. Okay, so they're going to be coming to council saying they've got affordability problems. You've got your urban people likely to get possibly be far better off because of Three Waters. But they're actually going to get through this better service, levels of service on the road. So is that the way? So I'm just thinking about whether there's anything that if council wants me to bring any other targeted rates, because that evens out. So, and it's up to you, but I need to know now whether I need to bring any other targeted rates that would then target everyone evenly and spreads the roads a bit different, the load of the burden of the costs, because these are going to be costs. And when we come back to you, I imagine that you're going to want to put a ceiling on it for, because today, how many million is that? I've worked out it's 10 million a year just on repairs and maintenance renewals. I don't know how much extra, because some of those things won't be extra what we're currently doing in our budget, but there will be some extra in the capital projects you've got. So, and that's not, may not be subsidised. So we've got to come up with a something for you, but we could come back and say, okay, it's going to cost $20 million. But the people who are going to incur the costs are going to be the rural people.
Which won't sit well with the community at all.
And they'll get the benefits, but I'm just, and the urban people are going to get a reduction overall.
Yeah.
So it's just whether.
This is for services that are going to be paid for in a lot of urban areas rather than rural as well.
Yes, well, urban will have, but because it's based on land value, they'll bear the burden. So
It makes what we discussed the other day really important when we talked about capital versus land value. And the fact that we never end up with a fair system, but we've got to try and strike the right system that we can.
Well, that's why I'm bringing it up now, because if you recall, what Stephen did have, and I haven't got it with me, but he had that table where he showed we were right down the bottom for targeted rates.
Yeah.
And that's why people have gone to show those on your invoice. We don't. We show everything as general rates. So I'm asking the question now, because if
I'd like to see.
because I could pull out things like libraries, parks, and they could be, but I need to understand if you want that. If not, then you understand the implications of what we're doing going ahead, because it's too late.
It's a lesson.
But does it not though depend on over what catchment you impose those targeted rates? Like, are you saying that it would put the burden a little bit off the rural people if you had more urban targeted rates for town? Is that what you mean, or?
Yes, we could do, generally, because it's just like the UAGC, it's a standard minimum that a household has to pay. So if you're taking it off the land value calculation, then generally there's more people in the urban centres, so they'll be sharing the rate. That's all I'm.
Well, what sort of thing might we do that for?
Well, I was thinking about libraries, and you can decide libraries and parks. It's the two that came to my thinking. That is something that people value as well, and they. But there could be some others. I'd have to have a look through.
So do you mean that you would impose that over the urban area of a town? So you'd go, the parks have a targeted rate that's imposed over the whole urban area.
Well, I think the benefit of parks, I mean, probably the urban, we could do that, but it would mean then having a new area. However, we could also do it over, could we do it like, over everyone?
Oh,
As a
yeah,
uniform
okay, yeah.
rate. Or, and you can decide whether you want it to break down to, break it down further, where the cost.
I think if everybody though, not just reduce the amount of money required from land value rates for everybody, how does it?
Yes, it does, but
You see another name.
it is.
Yeah.
And it's,
I think one of the things that we talked about, Sue, when I talked to you the other day, was the fact that the benefit of it was when people get their rates and they go, oh my God, there's my rates. But there's nothing listed for what they get. But when you have some definitive targeted rates, they go, oh, okay, I'm paying for that specifically, and it's a little bit more explanatory for them. Councillor Elizabeth?
Good point. Don't know if this is doable, but the biggest criticism that I receive from rural residents about the rates is like, they don't have streetlights, they don't have footpaths, they don't use the facilities that the urban have, which is what I'm hearing you saying. So is it possible, I mean, I still think rural people use those services to an extent, so I don't think they should not contribute at all. But yeah, is it possible to have urban people paying a higher proportion for those services than rural people? Is that?
yes, you could do that, and you could do that through a differential. We'd have to look
Because,
at that.
I mean, I don't want to,
That would probably be the easiest way if
but I just think that would be revolutionary
can do that.
if we could look at something like that, because that is the largest criticism, because as we've had all these discussions about rates, it is a tax, but people think of it like their power bill, and they think they should be they feel like they should see a return for what they're paying on their rates, and when they live rurally, they don't feel like they get that, and it all just becomes
Yeah, so that's a good suggestion too. So we could do that by a differential, or we could look at how we pull out some targeted rates. So we could come back with you one more time to look at that. So you could understand that.
I'm not sure. And like the mayor's commented, if it's actually itemised on your rates.
It makes it a bit more, yeah.
Everything's clearer.
I'm throwing that out there anyway.
Councillor Vincent, followed by Councillor Larson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. That's an interesting can of worms because as I gave the example earlier about with the sewerage rate, you know who the consumer is and who gets the benefit. And things like libraries and public parks are a public good that there's no real control over who gets the benefit of them, other than say the library membership card, which I think is free anyway. So I'm not so comfortable with the idea of it being a targeted rate. I mean, because there'll be people who will see, well, there's a eroding component here. Oh, I live on a state highway, so I'm not, and I don't use the library, and I don't go to public parks because I'm just happy to stay at home or whatever. So I shouldn't pay any rates. Like it's a kind of a two-edged sword. There'll also be a chunk there that actually is overheads, which is like the benefit being, well, you get me and you, and well, I've never had cause to ring my local councillor, so I'm not getting I don't need to contact with the organisation, so I'll pass on paying my rates this year, thank you. I'm drawing an extreme case, but I think it's a fuller discussion that perhaps we need to have, but you need an answer now.
Well, I just want to know if you want me to come back to you, or that's it today, and
We would like you to come back. I think we've struck some good conversation here. I think, we need to also maybe send some more thoughts to you as well. With what Councillor Vincent was saying, it's about pay your rates, your taxes, and you don't have children, but they spend a hell of a lot of your taxes on education, right? So it's like the social obligation type thing, isn't it? A little bit. Councillor Larson?
Or paying for people's dental care under the age of 30 and also paying for your own or something like that. I just come back to the point that the Mayor was making there about people knowing what they're getting for their rates, whether they use it or not. And I certainly think that's something we do need to look at is these exploding costs partly as a result of the exploding tree weeds in the parks. And maybe we can use some targeting for them and actually, get a better outcome. I don't know.
Yeah.
If I may, through the mayor, just to close out my presentation, my last question and comments for today is, from the maps that were in the presentation, can you all please look through priority 1, 2 and 3 and let me know if there's anything that needs to be shuffled around to go for development of the LTP, because all of this has to go to consultation.
Just a question, not on LTP, nothing to do with, since you have taken over. One thing which has come over very blatantly is the poor, like in terms of managing the process. So say, for example, there's one road which is to be done, send a thing in there in the council, and then how NTA handles it. If we can improve on that, that'll be awesome, yeah. How the complaint process or whatever, the resolution of things handled, there's no double dipping and, there's not poor planning. That is one area I would like you to focus on. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Rachel Williams.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say thank you for the work that you've done in putting this all together for us. And yeah, I'll be giving some feedback on it. So thank you.
That's awesome. Done and dusted, are we?
So can I just be clear on next steps, Andy,
Sure.
please?
So we've got to now put the LTP together to go out to consultation. So probably over the next 4 to 6 weeks, I would appreciate some feedback on those maps. And have we got the priority 1, 2 and 3 right? And once we've got that feedback, then I can prepare the LTP to Sue's team and we can work through the costings. And
one more question from me.
I'll be asking for feedback within a week.
Yeah.
Sorry, we can't wait 6 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, one more question from me, Andy, is I guess you can't do anything about signage until we have a result on Saturday either.
Yeah. Wait.
yeah, through the mayor, that is holding us up a little bit in the NTA with the development of the asset management plans and stuff, that we don't know what the GPS looks like. So we don't know what the RLTP is going to be locked in as, and that could still be further away.
And sorry, just to ask you one more question, Andy, apologies. So moderation process, I know you touched on it. We asked for this much, we get this much. Timing wise with that?
8th of December starts.
The moderation process starts on 8th of December.
It starts out of filter with.
By the 8th of December.
Yes. Our submission has to be in so that they can.
Okay.
It's out of step, our LTP, and always has been.
So back to Sue's comment, yeah, it is out of step, but I mean, it is what it is, right? But get back within, if we could possibly get it, I'd appreciate it. For Andy. Direct to you, Andy?
Yeah.
Thank you.
What's the last name, Andy?
Sorry?
Last name, so it's on your name.
Brown.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for a wonderfully brief meeting. I see Councillor Larson's keen to go and have his lunch. She's backing up.
I heard the mayor was shouting lunch, so.